Welcome to Rolled Worlds. I'm the writer of the work inside of Tanu, Sean Roberts.
I am a helpful creator, Kim Johnson.
I am the artist, Ronan.
We are the team inside of Rolled Worlds creating this page on YouTube in order to be able to show people the world that we've created over the course of years. And today, our first episode, we're going to be discussing the cosmology of Tanu, what Tanu fits inside of.
Can you explain what cosmology is?
Cosmology is the universe and the makeup of it. And so usually in a Dungeons and Dragons world where there's gods and all that type of stuff, cosmology is usually referring to the setup of the different planes of existence and how they link together and all that type of stuff. So yeah, we're going to be discussing the cosmology, but before we do that, we're going to discuss a little bit about how the whole concept of Tanu came into existence. Before we get into discussing the cosmology of this universe, though, we first wanted to discuss what was the inspiration and the beginning of the whole idea that is Tanu. And that started back in probably 2010 while creating a board game called The Gathering with a group of kids in an after-school program that I worked. That game went really well. The kids really enjoyed it. I went to another after-school program. They enjoyed it, but they wanted to go more into the actual world building and the creating of things that are inside the world. At the time, it was very much like a Risk type of game. I created this game that everybody could play on Facebook that involved creating their own race that exists inside this world. It was inspired by things like Model UN, but also Dungeons and Dragons and other fantasy games like that mixed with Risk.
It happened around 2014.
Yeah. Well, there was one that happened in like some other world that I had made up before then. But then in 2014, we created another one that was set in another world that is not the map that we have now. And friends created all their own different races. A mutual friend of ours, Mel, she actually was in that game. She created a race of fairies that were technologically advanced. And so it's just this group of people that were all playing this game. It was called Andoria at the time. Inside the map of Andoria, the players would every day make choices for their races, and they would attack each other, and the consequences would occur based on dice that I would roll each morning. And
Each morning.
The game went really well. Everybody enjoyed it. Everybody helped try to fight against this mutual threat called the Corlinians, which ended up being the undead that exist in the world of Tanu. Many of the races decided that they wanted to leave Andoria because everything was going so badly there. They wanted me to expand on the map of Andoria to make the world bigger. So I took what was already there and I just kind of started making up this map that grew out from Andoria. People started saying, well, I go here and I go there, and they started populating this world. Some of the races that were created during the Andoria game bled over into what is now Tanu and still exist, and others died out during that creation. From that world game that we played on Facebook, when that kind of ceased to be, I decided to continue working on the ideas of that map and what existed inside this world that we had kind of developed together. And that's where we get Tanu. Cosmology. Originally, the cosmology was that a small group of gods created a bunch of races inside of this world that they fabricated together. That was Andoria, when the players were the gods of these different races. Ever since then, a different canon has come to be that I fabricated based on the different gods that I littered this world with, that people worship. With those gods comes other dimensions in which the gods live in. That's where we get to today, talking about the cosmology of the universe that Tanu exists inside. I have a very crude map that I had created at one time to help me understand how the different dimensions are connected to each other. The universe, like the dimension in which Tanu exists in, is called Midland, and that's where our planet exists, where we're playing this game and where these races exist. Each other dimension, you'll see on the map that I'll show right now, on the green circle we have Midland. Each line that's connected to a different circle represents the path you have to follow in order to get from one dimension to another. I wanted to create it so then characters inside the world, because we have a Dungeons and Dragons-like game that we play called Tanu Role Playing. I wanted to make it so then teleporters couldn't just jump real easily from dimension to dimension. I wanted to make it so that if you wanted to go all the way from Pardala and you wanted to go to Vaughn, it was very difficult because of how many jumps you had to make through other dimensions in order to get there. You can't just immediately jump all the way over. So if you look at Midland, shooting off...
Do we have it here?
Yes. Yeah, it's on there right now.
It lands in the middle.
Right, it's probably going to be like where your head is right now. We can't see it exactly right now, but there's Midland in the very center, the green circle.
Around here somewhere.
Right. And put your hands down so then it's not in the way. Directly above the blue circle, the light blue circle, and it says Sipta on it. That's the elemental plane of air. That is connected to one of the major gods inside of the universe, and her name is Ilana.
She's an interesting character. She's one of my favorites.
Yep. She's one of the major gods in the world. Ilana is the goddess of ecstasy and bliss and pleasure. She is considered the all-gendered one, meaning that she is able to be both male, female, anything. She's usually referred to as a she, but she can be anything. There's also other beings that exist inside of the realm of Sipta as well. And we can't show you the artwork that goes along with all of these different beings because the artwork that I have over the years that I've collected is all based on stuff that other people have drawn. But Ronan, over the course of time, will start sketching out things, so then we have some of our own original work to be able to present to you.
Right now he has his head down because he's working on our logo.
Yeah. So some of the minor gods that exist inside of Sipta are Gu, which is one of the different dragon gods. He's the silver dragon god. Also inside of Sipta is Shun, who is the actual god of the realm. It's the elemental god of air. He kind of dominates the plane, even though a major god exists inside it. There's also the great Korin and the mighty Uni, who are the two unicorn gods that exist inside of this universe.
Those are mine.
Yep, both of those were created by Kim here. They're both worshipped by the race of the Unicorns, which are a race of unicorn humanoids. And then there's Vala, who is the god of rebirth and the sky. Below Midland would be Quoria, which is
The other one is over here.
No, you were right. Sipta would be over there.
So it's over here.
No, Quoria.
It's over here.
They're right, is going to be over here.
That's what I'm pointing.
We don't know what we're pointing at right now, but
This is the green.
it's fine.
This is the blue.
You're putting too much work into this. We don't know where we're going to be pointing. And so we've got Quoria, and that's the elemental plane of water. The elemental planes...
That's the brown one. Can you at least tell them what color it is?
It's blue. Dark blue.
Oh, we're talking about that.
Quoria, the one that says
I was going to
Quoria.
be confused why it was brown. I was like,
Right.
You made the water one brown?
Right. No, it's not brown. It's not brown. One of them is brown,
I don't
but
have
it's
my
not.
glasses
But
on.
it's not Coria. So we have Sipta, and then we've got Coria, which is below Midland. That's the elemental plane of water. The major god that exists inside of the elemental plane of water is Cathalusa. And Cathalusa is the goddess of the ocean. She kind of looks like a squid humanoid, but not like Ursula. She has 2 legs, 2
Because
arms.
Ursula is an octopus.
Right, but octopus, squid, with tentacled. She doesn't have a bunch of tentacles for legs. She's not a mermaid. She's not a octopus person. But she looks like a humanoid that's very fish-like. Besides Cathalusa, we also have Shaul, who is a goddess of the plane of water itself. Once again, there's a god that kind of is the plane, and then there's a major god that kind of rules over a lot of what happens there. But Shaul is the plane itself, but she doesn't actually live inside the ocean-like environment of Coria. Oh, and speaking of which, Sipta is pretty much all air. There's some land pockets here and there, but for the most part, it's just one big open space that you would fall in forever if you didn't have wings. But Coria is all water. If you go there, there is no round space to walk on. There is a core that you can eventually get to, but for the most part, it's just completely like a planet of water. Outside of that planet, it's all encased with ice. And Shaul, the actual goddess of the plane of water, lives on top of the ice. She lives outside of the planet, and she's always looking in. There's Wewa, which is one of the goddess of the Alluvians. The Alluvians are elves inside of the world of Tanu, and they got to our planet because they have spaceships. They're from space. They came from another planet because their sun died. They got here, and they had their own gods that they already worshipped on their planet, and one of them was Wewa, and she's the Alluvian goddess of beauty and love. So before they showed up, there were no elves on our planet besides when Andoria existed. One of the players, named Austin, he created a race of stone elves, but they were one of the races that didn't even just make the cut when it came to writing them into the stories. They actually got wiped out in Andoria because of the Corlinians. So story-wise, there was once upon a time a race of elf-like beings that died out long ago.
And the Alluvians also happened in story.
Right. Inside the story, while we were doing tabletop role-playing inside of the world of Tanu, I came up with this idea of these space elves with my friend Lars. Lars was talking about creating something similar to this, but he never got around to finishing it, and so I just kind of said, like, can I? And so I kind of took it and
Took inspiration
rolled. Right.
from lots of different things.
Right, like Event Horizon also inspired the movie Event Horizon, if you've ever seen it, that inspired the Alluvians, because the 2 ships that they came to Tanu on, one of them got caught in the Void, which is another plane of existence that we'll be discussing. But while in the Void, they were traveling for only a couple minutes, but to them it felt like 500 years. And during that time, they lost their knowledge of their technology. They became very primitive, started eating each other, and that's where basically the Dark Elves came to be. And they're called the Duskites. And so the Duskites and the Alluvians got to our planet, and they had their own gods that they were already worshipping. And so the belief in those gods became a thing on the planet of Tanu, which then brought these gods here to Tanu with them. And so Wewa is one of them. And then we also have Re, who is another one of the dragon gods. specifically the blue dragon god, the water dragon god, and Wong. And Wong was another random creation based off of finding artwork and realizing that I wanted it to exist somewhere in the world. But we have yet to even litter our planet with this race, the Murlocs, or some type of Murloc-like creature.
It's another thing that I insisted on.
We have yet to actually put them inside the world anywhere, which is kind of one of the things that we'll be doing on this page is really starting to go into detail about our maps, and with your help, creating a much more developed planet that this whole story takes place on. But Wong is the god of fertility, but it's a god of the Murlocs, or whatever they end up being called inside of Tanu.
They totally can't be called Murlocs.
Right. We would want to call most races inside of the world something original that we would call them ourselves. So that's the elemental plane of water. Next to the elemental plane of water of Quoria, we have Rog, and Rog is the brown circle. You're pointing in the wrong direction again. It's the elemental plane of earth. We have Nyaya, who is a major god. She's the goddess of nature, of the earth, of growing things, of all things natural and animal. And she is usually depicted as human-like in shape. She has big ram horns coming off of her head, and she has leaves decorating all over her body, and very connected to the earth and trees.
She's pretty awesome too.
Yeah. Then we have Beal, who is the elemental plane of earth god. This realm of Rog also hosts Grandic, who is the way Beal is the plane of Rog, Grandic is the plane of Midland. Grandic is the planet of Tanu. We also have Fi, who is the green dragon god. All the other dragon gods are fairly large and colossal in size. Fi is about this big. It's a tiny little dragon god. He exists inside of forests and nature. He's usually either living in Rog or he's traveling through the forests inside of Midland, inside of Tanu. And then we have Quila Naso, who is another one of the minor gods, specifically the god of the hunt and a god of nature, but specifically of the hunt, of animals and of the wild, and is usually kind of like a satyr. Instead of having a human-like face, it's a deer face, fur all over, and big deer antlers coming off of his head. Asga, she is the dwarven goddess of smithing and jewelry and all things that you find in the earth. The Rog is also home to all of the Fae, the Seelie and the Unseelie Fae. They all live in Rog. That's the, I can't remember the name of the Dungeons and Dragons equivalent to where all the Fae live. The Fae Wild, that might be it.
Sounds right.
I think that's it, the Fae Wilds. But the Rog is pretty much the Fae Wilds in that sense. But physically, it has no sunlight because it is completely encased, like it's all inside of this one gigantic cave. The only light that penetrates here comes from like a magical glow that seems to occur from lots of the different plants that glow in the dark. And so it's a very mysterious place. And that's where the Seelie and the Unseelie Fae live. Above Rog and above Midland, we have Drasha, which is, over there. And that's the elemental plane of fire. And the god of that plane is Dringe, a pretty aggressive plane of existence, and so many of the gods that live there are also fairly aggressive. There is Gore, who is the major god of war, of bloodshed, of violence. He's fully clad in armor. You can't see any skin. You can't see his eyes.
One of our kids helped with that one.
And she, right, it was Hannah? Yeah, she helped create Gore. Cha is also another god that exists inside of this plane of existence. Cha is the red dragon god. Above, Drasha and Sipta, so the white circle, it's probably going to be somewhere over here, maybe. I'll try to make the map kind of go in line with where you point. But Celestia, no, it won't be that close. We have Celestia, and Celestia is the realm of neutral good, and it is a plane of beauty. And I know Celestia is kind of already a thing inside of Dungeons and Dragons. So we might have to come up with a different name for it.
Yeah.
So that's something that you could comment below. If you have any ideas for a new name for Celestia for us, put it down below in the comments. When we see the different comments, we'll choose one of them as like the option for
It's totally
Celestia.
not going to be fair. It's going to be just based on what we like.
And so we have Morjan there, who is the major god of lawful good.
And he's Sean's favorite.
And he's the god of law, of goodness, of justice, of righteousness, of all the goody two-shoe paladin things. If they're not a murder hobo paladin, then they're doing things pretty much in the name of Morjan. Another god that lives there is Layton, and she is the blue night goddess of sacrifice. She's also another god that's worshipped a lot by the Feronians, just like Morjan.
The Feronians are our common humans.
When you can think of a traditional medieval Europe, that's what the Feronians are. Then we've also got Su existing in this plane, who is the white dragon god, just a god that is of neutral good. And so her alignment very much corresponds with the plane that she exists in. And then we have Dra, who is a strange god in the sense that it is the formless deity of equality and preservation. So Dra is the formless deity of equality and preservation, whereas Ilana is all forms, can be anything, can be whatever she wants. Dra is nothing. Dra believes in that nothingness creates balance, that having no form, that giving up the idea of form, refusing to conform to the idea of form, of status, of titles, of labels, of all those different...
Like the hippie absolute.
The true idea of enlightenment and ascension beyond the physical, and preservation in the sense of preserving all that which is inside of the universe. So it's a very strange god to worship, because if you have a motive and you have a desire, Dra probably doesn't help you get what you want, because Dra has no motive beyond the continuation of preservation and making sure that there is absolute balance and equality inside of the universe. Beyond that, Dra does exist inside of the plane of neutral good. So there is an inevitable desire inside of Dra for goodness, right, for that preservation, that there's a reason for preservation, a reason for equality, and it has to do with goodness. The Uloran also exists inside of the plane of Celestia, and the Uloran are kind of like our world of angels. Like what angels are in another plane of existence, inside of like Dungeons and Dragons, inside of different religions, whatever it is. Our version of angels are the Lorens. They look kind of like harpies, but without human skin showing, and they're beautiful, and they're all white feathered.
Are you talking about fantasy harpies, or are you talking about...
Fantasy harpies.
There's the harpies that have human body forms, and then there's the ones that are birds with breasts on them.
I know. Fantasy harpies, not Greek mythology harpies. They're beautiful, and they're fully clad in white feathers. They have bird feet.